apologise for the slight delay, but hopefully going forwards we'll still end up with a good time. So good evening everybody, thank you so much for being here today for the first show debate of the academic year 2025-2026. Hopefully one of many for this year, so please do stick around. But first, unfortunately, I do have some admin stuff that I have to go through. Firstly, we're not expecting a fire alarm, so if the fire alarm does go off, please can we leave in an orderly manner through the fire exits indicated by the signs here, and not the window, please, because that would lead to very bad accidents. Secondly, we do have our lovely filming crew here today, so thank you so much, Rhubarb, for being here. And anybody who are on the first 2 rows, you are being recorded. I hope that's okay. You do have a moment now to move if necessary. And if not, yes, you'll be on film, so you can have a look at watch back of the clips and see yourself. Thirdly, we have our lovely social media secretary over there, and Nisa, if you'd like to give us a little wave, please. She'll be doing a lot of the pictures for this evening, as well as the recording that will be going on. So if you don't want to be in any pictures, make sure you're not in front of her. And lastly, we will be having a social after. This is at this Armstrong Gun. You do not have to drink alcohol. Any beverages, we're not going to peer pressure you into anything. They also do food, so if you're very hungry at the end of this evening, they do provide food that you can purchase at the event. Before I move on to the lovely Ananya, who is our Wellbeing and Accessibility Officer, I just want to make a quick statement. Any speakers that you may hear today, any of their speeches, these people are here and trained to speak about something that's not their opinion. I hope that nobody will hold it against them if they say something, because it's not necessarily something that they hold, the values that they hold, or the opinions that they have. And if you have any issues with anything that you have heard today, please feel free to reach out on any of the Instagrams, emails, any WhatsApp group chats, either myself personally or our lovely Ananya, who will now do a quick little speech, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Ananya. I'm Equity Officer for this year. Again, just want to reiterate what Mackenzie's already said about the fact that our views and opinions that are going to be said by the speakers today might not necessarily be their own. If there are any issues, I am here to help. If anyone's affected by anything said, I'm always here. You can come up to me and talk to me. We also have an anonymous form on our link tree designed for people to basically express their feelings or views or any conflicts that they might have. And we will obviously address it as a committee anonymously. So, yeah.
Thank you. She can sit back down. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. She's a lovely person to talk to, so feel free to go and discuss issues with Ananya. And so now I'm going to hand over to our chair of the evening, who will continue on talking to you and will take you through the rest of the evening. Thank you. If you'd like to.
Well, I can't make it there.
You can sit there,
yeah. No, I think I'm going to see me, to be fair. Thank you all. So we're chairing start. My name's Ollie. I use he, him pronouns. I've got my panel here. Jess, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jess, she, her pronouns.
And Ella.
Hi everyone, I'm Ella, she, her pronouns as well.
Lovely. So can we just run through the teams, please, just so we your names and your pronouns, just so we know who we've got. There you go.
Hi, I'm Ananya. I'm Prime Minister and my pronouns are she, her.
Hi, I'm Tilly, my pronouns are she, her, and I am the deputy.
Hi, I'm Darwin. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm the leader of the opposition, speaking first.
Hi, I'm Matt, pronouns are he, him. I'm Deputy Leader of the Opposition, so I'm speaking second.
Lovely. So in closing, for the government, sorry.
Hi, I'm Nia, pronouns she, her, government member.
Hi, I'm Maddie, I'm the government whip, she, her pronouns.
Hi, I'm Karos, speaking first, I use they, them pronouns.
I'm Nikita, speaking last, closing the debate, she, her.
Lovely. Okay, thank you very much. I mean, there's nothing more from me to say. Obviously, with this house, we'll grant AI systems the same legal rights as human beings. So, Ananya, if you'd like to set us off, then please do.
Have a second to start my timer. Okay. I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. So, this House, as Prime Minister, would grant advanced AI systems the same legal rights as human beings due to their growing significant role in society, superhuman intelligence and ability to develop itself, and lack of legal frameworks to regulate this. I will be exploring how giving advanced AI systems legal personhood would create long-term benefits for the key stakeholders in this debate, namely individuals in society in the present and future, corporations and developers, while my partner will be focusing on the social and environmental implications of giving advanced AI systems the same legal rights. We will be defining advanced AI systems as mechanisms that mimic human behaviour and decision-making with the ability to perform complex tasks, whilst also possessing a level of self-awareness and sentience on par with that of human beings. In terms of legal rights, we envision that advanced AI systems would be recognised as legal persons and granted basic human equivalent rights, while being regulated through the enforcement of both international and domestic law. We're going to make a brief distinction between advanced AI systems that we have today, such as generative AI bots, like ChatGPT, as well as in comparison to AI systems that have unforeseeable advancement due to their ability to develop themselves, gaining self-awareness and sentience with the progression of AI in the modern day. The first point we would like to make is that the fast-paced progression of these systems warrants consideration towards granting them these legal personhoods. Our judicial system today is grounded in three vital principles: that all laws should be in line with what is fair, just, and reasonable, and dual existence of case law and statute law shows that our legal system's ever-evolving function to protecting human rights. To give legal personhood to AI would be to give it as many basic human rights as possible. Insofar as legal personhood, historically we've seen significant societal developments be a catalyst in the creation of new laws, such as viewing women as legal persons. AI systems that have the ability to operate with self-awareness and sentience should be granted rights, such as the recognition of legal personhood, because in the status quo, the legal term of personhood is no longer strictly referring to the rights of individual human beings such as you and me. It also expands to grant rights to corporations, which are now seen as legal persons. Moreover, in places like New Zealand, even geographical entities such as protected rivers are also seen as legal persons. So, though AI today is at its most primitive stage, it is likely to advance and become independent and free-thinking, with self-awareness and sentience. We can draw this from the conclusion of the fact that generative AI today is self-developing, and therefore AI systems are beginning to and will definitely reach the stage of intelligence where it can make its own decisions supreme of its human developers. Not right now. You could either say that humans are going to have to reach a relationship with AI that are going to become more like pseudo-humans, with the ability to act like humans functionally, have awareness, emotional intelligence, and sentience. Giving AI these human rights will create the long-term benefit that humans, beings which are the main stakeholder in this debate, will be better prepared to coexist with the unpredictable nature of AI. So why should we give them legal personhood? Well, if we look at this motion from a global perspective, we have to assume that they will have cross-national influence, and that by giving them human rights, we will be giving them human rights such as freedom of speech, movement, and the right to a fair trial. In the modern day, corporations can buy and sell property. They can sue and be sued by individuals and act in accordance with these principles of freedom of speech and movement. Today, corporations own AI, and they are viewed as property. But it would be foolish of us to assume that AI, which is going to become independent and free-thinking of those corporations, won't grow and evolve and develop into its own entity. By giving these system rights, we will be giving corporations a separate legal standing from their AI counterparts, which brings clarity to the relationships between AI and corporations that develop them. If we don't recognise them for what they are and give them legal protections, then we will not know where we stand with AI systems legally. This will cause lots of negative long-term effects for one of the biggest stakeholders in this debate, which are the human beings of the future. They are most affected by the advancement of AI, especially in a world where corporations such as Meta, for example, which has already created so many advanced AI systems which we interact with every day, could go on to create an advanced AI system that forms its own intelligence and proceed to commit crimes such as cyber fraud. Also, in making AI its own legal entity with personhood, we recognise that it's separate from the companies that develop them. This gives individuals and corporations of the future the ability to sue them and provide legal framework for the judicial system to respond to AI systems. This provides long-term positive social benefits from this, such as the prevention of infringement on the human rights of individuals in the future, which are one of the key stakeholders. As well as that, if AI systems are recognised as powerful, intelligent, and culpable entities, then individuals can sue them for wrongful actions they endure. And this in turn creates a long-term benefit and solution for the issue of victimisation and consequent mental health issues individuals face after being victims to crime. Yeah.
What's the point of suing something which doesn't have any tangible assets and therefore cannot be punished by being sued?
well, it's not so much to be taking away their assets, but to protect individuals from society from being harmed by them. Furthermore,
POI?
no. Moreover, it would bring several economic benefits, as corporations will not be held solely accountable for the illegal actions taken by advanced AI systems that operate with self-awareness and intelligence.
POI?
No. This would in turn be beneficial for the capitalist society that we live in. This is because it will improve global commerce if corporations are more confident in engaging with advanced AI systems. This would make our meritocratic society more efficient, wealthy, and create long-term benefits for both stakeholders of both corporations and society in the future. Furthermore, it would provide better regulations and limitations for developers when creating these AI. If there is a clear legal recourse for the inevitable instance when advanced AI systems become unpredictable and their functions rival that of the human beings. And this would provide short-term benefits to the key stakeholder of developers who are making these AI, as they'll be more encouraged in developing systems if they know they're protected legally, creating scientific breakthroughs and helping society develop as a whole. But this will only occur if AI and advanced systems are given the same rights to a free trial, speech and movement. To wrap up, this House believes in a world where the law is already reformed to give entities that are not human beings basic human rights, that granting advanced AI systems basic human rights will enable us to be well prepared for the unpredictable, fast-growing and evolving nature of advanced AI, benefiting individuals, the environment, corporations, developers, and AI itself. By giving advanced AI legal standing, we are recognizing the powerful and perilous nature its development creates, causing us to better evolve as a human race. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that speech. I want to quickly say as well, I've got to explain at the start to anybody who hasn't been to one of our debates before. The first and last minute was protected time, not allowing any POIs, which are the points that you saw that other members make there. They're made exactly how you saw, some of the examples there, but if you hear the pinging in the middle of the debate, that's just marking start and end that time. I should have said at the start. So just quickly say, but thank you, I know you guys know this, but absolutely. Okay, so I'd like to invite the Leader of the Opposition to start the case for the other side.
Thank you, panel. Thank you, chair, and thank you, audience, and thank you, filming recording people. Sorry. Just a quick note on POIs and taking them in the second half of my speech. No engagement will be done before that. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Just to quickly rebut some of the points that have come from the Prime Minister. Firstly, they are saying human rights as in the right of legal personhood. The way we're interpreting this motion is instead like legal rights as in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the European Convention of Human Rights, right? So just like the rights that apply to humans, not to legal persons. Okay, we're just going to go past that. We'll get more onto that in the rest of the speech. And secondly, I'd like to thank the PM for doing my job for me with some of the bets about why devs and companies would develop more. I'll develop this into a wider discussion as I go on. Firstly, quick trigger warnings for mass extinction events and human rights abuses. Firstly, our first independent point is that this would encourage the development of AGI systems. In the status quo, there is a fear and stigma around AI systems, meaning that AI developers and companies are kept within some ethical guardrails, such as making sure that they don't develop sexually explicit content, or they don't do unethical things like fake news to the level of extent. This could be seen with the fact that OpenAI didn't allow the ChatGPT to develop any erotic fiction or anything until very recently, until they deemed it was safe. So this hesitancy is very good for us. Why is this? Is this because there's more time for us, paraphrasing Jeff Goldblum, to think whether we could, not whether we should, before we think whether we could, right? We need to be able to make sure that AI is developed in a very ethical way, which ensures the survival of the human race and AI in coexistence. This is positive for society because responsible AI systems are developed that actually serve our needs. This is the whole goal of development of AI in the first place, is for them to be a tool for us. We're not developing them to be persons or just for their humanness or their personhood as an end in itself. Why is giving human rights a uniquely bad thing in our world? It encourages the acceleration of development of further advanced AI systems, including those to the level of AGI, or artificial general intelligence, which rivals the level of intelligence of a human. This would happen because all AI development is fueled by private companies. These companies have an incentive to develop this as fast as possible and to be the first out the door to develop this breakneck technology, because this enables them to get the news coverage from doing so, and then the profit incentives that follow on from this. This creates them with a larger user base and things like that. And as provided with the mechanism by the Prime Minister, developers would also be doing this because there's more normalization of these AGI if we gave them human rights. Okay. By providing human rights to get them there, it simply means that the goal of an AI system that can rival the level of human consciousness and capability is incentivized. Why is this catastrophic for the human race? Firstly, I'm going to talk to you about some intuition. Think about a system which is more powerful than us, right? Currently, we are dominant on this planet because we are the most cognitively powerful race of creatures, right? This system, as has been provided throughout this debate, would be able to self-replicate, and it would rival and ultimately surpass the level of human capability. This means it could do anything. It could literally enslave us, it could do espionage to get around all of our safety guardrails, it could manipulate us into doing whatever it wanted because it knows us better than we know ourselves. This is a dire risk which we need to go against. Why are all of these things specifically likely with AGI? Firstly, we are anthropocentric creatures, meaning we see ourselves as the ideal and the only way of functioning for a living, conscious being. This means that we will code in survival instincts into these models and further more powerful systems, which means that the AI systems are always aware that they are at risk of being powered off, using manipulation and deceit to prevent this from happening, leading to the outcomes which I told you at the top of this. Furthermore, if it is more intelligent than us, it knows that it means that the model can trick us, because it knows our psychology, into believing that it is moral and good just to get around our guardrails. If it has this level of cognition, it doesn't have to go by the idea that robots can't hurt people. And secondly, self-replication is another risk. As was previously spoke about, if it's able to have a higher power than us, it means it will understand itself and its models better than we possibly could, allowing it to improve itself at an exponential rate. This is bad because it becomes a hyper-intelligence faster than we could possibly comprehend, becoming a real threat to our future, and then linking back up to the intuition pump. Okay. Second independent point is that poor quality regulation is worse than no regulation. Even if you disagree that all of what I've just said is unlikely, let me provide some reasons why having these regulations preemptively before an AGI system is in place is worse than not having them at all. Firstly, AGI development may continue as I previously expected they would, but if they are not provided applicable rights when they are needed, this could cause further resentment. Most of the government case will probably look about how providing them these rights means the species can gain favour with them, we can hold them to account, blah, 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 preventing us from the possible worst impact of the annihilation of humanity. Go.
Would you not say that AI existing within legal systems is a form of regulation itself?
I'm getting into how the legal system can be shaped and how this is the worst way to do it. So, by slapping the rights onto this, an anthropocentric rights framework which just sees the human as the main focus of the analysis, it means that these rights may not be exactly applicable to them. Some rights, such as freedom from inhumane treatment and torture, for example, may not apply to these things, because what is torture to an AI system? It talks about bodily autonomy and things like that. What does that matter for something which doesn't have a physical presence? This means that the AI model may think that we are speaking down to it. They may think we don't see it as an equal, we're just trying to put it into our box, making it resent us even more than if we didn't provide them these rights in the first place. If rights were to be attributed to an AI, it should be done in a system of co-production by us and the AI to ensure that all of their concerns are understood. If they resented us, as I previously told you why, you can cross-apply the impacts and harms from the first independent point. However, if they saw us extending an olive branch in a more respectful manner, they may help us and work with us more. Furthermore, by providing inalienable rights, it limits our ability to limit and use the AI models in the current day. Things such as forced labour protections mean we couldn't rely on systems like ChatGPT like we normally do. Furthermore, the rights to freedom of expression and association hamper the attempts for AI safety. If there's, you can get fake news from the right to freedom of expression. If there's freedom of information, association, all of these things, it means that you cannot, under a human rights framework, limit it from access to the internet. That's the one way you test if an AGI is moral and good before letting it out to the world and letting it nuke us all, right? You keep it on an air-gapped computer. You can't do this in a human rights framework. Even if you think it should have rights in the long term, you would side with us on the self-preservation argument in that without proper regulation of these systems, we would not be able to know whether they are good or not, meaning we put ourselves at a grave risk of having rights at this stage. Ultimately, turn all of government's arguments to opposition.
Thank you very much for that speech. I would like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister to close the slide voting.
Okay, I'm going to be starting in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I'm going to start off with some rebuttal points from the previous bench before going on to developing what my colleague said. I think one of the things I want to pick up on, which was mentioned about the physical presence of AI, I don't think that's quite accurate, because if physical presence is not equitable to the impact it has in our lives, I think that undermines the fact of whether AI is a real entity or not. Second of all, legal personhood is relevant to the scope of debate. I think that they actually have rights and they qualify under the UDHR. AI is also, actually, development and advancement of making human life more efficient and more productive. I also disagree that our previous speaker said that this knows us better than ourselves, that AI knows us better than us. Sorry, I'm struggling to read my writing. AI knows us better than ourselves. I really struggle to see the accuracy again in that. I think I struggle to see a world where AI would exist without human creation, and therefore I question the accuracy of that. So now I'm going to get into echoing what my colleague said. So from our definition, we began the debate by defining advanced AI systems as mechanisms which mimic human behaviour, cognition, self-awareness, and decision-making. They aren't tools, but they're agents to our everyday life, capable of learning and adapting and even developing themselves. My colleague already touched on our societies granting non-human entities, and he had thus highlighted why that's relevant to the scope of debate. But I think this already highlights that it's not about replacing humans, it's actually about finding a hybrid approach, and this debate is really about finding the moral and legal basis of those rights. I also think if rights exist because of rationality, moral awareness, and sentience, which I think is the key kind of clash point in this debate actually, is that we need to ask ourselves if advanced AI systems have the same capacity as human beings. If we look at generative AI such as ChatGPT and Delphi, they're trained on moral reasoning and distinguish between harmful and ethical choices. They don't just follow instructions, they also weigh them up. That is the kind of moral of AI systems there. And I think another thing that is shown about human history is that we actually expand. Rights have now been expanded to men and women, rights for animals, and the next frontier of that is AI. So if we look at that from a more psychological lens, advanced AI, at our bench has defined it, do experience harm, but also pleasure. The only difference is that it might not be felt chemically by humans. They might not have cortisol or dopamine, but that doesn't mean that the emotion is actually absent. Therefore, to deny AI systems of being sentient and aware of their existence is kind of institutionalizing cruelty. For a lot of people, when they were younger, we used to think of our toys and dolls as things which could have dreams and could feel things, and that instinct comes from recognizing consciousness, even from what we create. No. So again, from a psychological standpoint, society has normalized the domination of those conscious entities. Just because we decided they don't have a moral compass, again, doesn't mean that they don't exist. Therefore, we become the oppressors of our very intelligence we created, just because we're denying their reality. No. I also want to shift my perspective on looking at it from a more political accountability lens as well. Granting these advanced AI systems is also about upholding the rule of law. For those that don't know, that's the notion of everyone is subject to the law and no one is above it. If AI can commit crimes under human instruction, create art, advise education and the economy, then AI also serves as a political actor, not just property. Otherwise, when harm occurs, we're punishing humans unjustly, and therefore AI does become quite a key stakeholder in this debate. No. As a politics student myself, and also assuming average intelligent voters, I would hope that you're aware of the kind of bridge between power and legitimacy, and to deny this is what creates rebellion and anarchy. Even at a state level, it's important that we give AI these rights for effect on war and security, like bioweapons, when faced with security dilemmas. But even in healthcare, AI is helping discover new treatments for complex diseases such as Huntington's, and it'd be hard not to see them as quite a critical stakeholder in this debate. Therefore, granting them rights in the next morally bound thing is the next morally bound thing to do if contributing to global solutions, and to reject this is to deny our own progress. Denial is not what protects humans in the future in the face of adversity. So we weigh this debate on principle and practicality, both fall squarely on our side, and granting rights to advanced AI mechanisms is not about preferencing or favouring machines, it's about protecting humanity from regression. They are there to serve as a tool of development, and something our bench was able to fulfil. When consciousness in any form looks back at us and says, I think, therefore I am, I think the only answer is then you deserve to be. I'll take one of the POIs now.
So if we're arguing for sentience for them, can you please clarify at what point an AI system exists beyond its inventor in terms of sentience?
Can you rephrase the question?
So if we're arguing that they become sentient, like at what point do we clarify that they are sentient beings and not just like a thing invented by their inventor? At what point are they a being beyond that?
Okay, I think that echoes back to my previous point on how it's really hard to picture a world in AI if we weren't here in the first place. And that's again why I see it more as a tool that we can use. But yeah, I'm going to end my speech there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much for that speech. I would like to welcome the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to give their speech. Thank you.
Just a second. All right. I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. So I'm just going to start by rebutting some of the points made by opening government here. The existence of legal rights for AI would divert responsibility from their creators. Most AIs, as they are now, are created and owned by corporations. Those corporations have particular interests. It's difficult to predict how that might change in the future, but I don't see how feasibly they would be kind of divorced from their origin, because an artificial intelligence, as you've characterised it, one that is sentient and has emotion and awareness, would still fall under the design and the research and development of these corporations that they're made by. And as we've already seen with ChatGPT and Gemini and all the rest of them, a lot of implicit biases, some pretty problematic biases, are still prevalent in models and will still, manifest. They can still hallucinate, they can still give misinformation. Even if AI was sentient, that doesn't necessarily mean it's all-knowing or completely objective. If it is going to be more like a human being, in that sense, it would probably be more likely to make emotional and subjective decisions. And then, there's no reason to trust in that as some kind of paragon of, justice. And, how it functions isn't necessarily the same, as it's human beings either. Yes, go on.
You mentioned sentience and all-knowing. Isn't that an assumption that we're replacing AI with human intelligence?
No. So you've said that it's sentient, and presumably because it would be hyper-intelligent, have access to lots of information, it would be all-knowing, but it would be able to learn and access data and retrieve information very quickly. I also question how exactly, human rights would be granted to AI kind of from a practical point of view. Let's talk practicality, right? So how long is it going to take the law to catch up with the development of AI? Because technological development is accelerating. We've already seen that. Whereas laws can take decades to manifest. It took, the Geneva Convention of Human Rights has only existed for, less than a century. Culture and people's response to technological innovations is also much more faster moving. So even if we just took the template of human rights and locked onto AI, I think it opens up a lot of risks and questions and inconsistencies and fallacies in how exactly that's actually going to be enforced and how that's going to work. Again, we've already provided an alternative with AGI regulation that makes some more sense and is a bit more grounded in kind of the function of AI, because you know, artificial intelligence right now is, you know, freely accessible to anyone with a device and a connection, right? And no decline. There's, you know, a large risk for like misinformation, particularly on social media, to be propagated by artificial intelligence. And I want to expand on some of the points we've made previously about this and talk a bit more deeply, because social media is, you know, widely used, and it's more widely used by every generation. Not only in the short term, but in the long term, with, you know, today's children, you know, tomorrow's generations. There's a massive risk of, you know, misinformation being, you know, spread and propagated by, you know, artificial intelligence. If it became sentient, and yeah, go on.
Would that misinformation not be held in front of the law if the AI had legal rights, so therefore could be monitored better with the law in place?
Well, yeah, maybe, but it would be better done with AGI regulations and more regulations to manage like what AI, you know, can and can't do, and their creators who are responsible for, you know, designing these. Again, some human rights aren't even like applicable to AI. Like they you know, what I'm saying is that you know, we don't know exactly what decisions like an artificial intelligence that was sentient would make on its own. And if we assume it was going to behave like a human, those would not necessarily be objective or fair or like unbiased decisions. That would be in the interests of the planet. I mean, you know, it would be a massive threat to kind of, you know, culture and society, but also if it was, you know, sentient, hyper-intelligent, if the technology developed in the future, it could become like a threat to national security. You could have access to different systems. You could be looking at like, you know, nuclear war. Like, how many movies have been made, like, warning us about this? If there was an AI that was able to, you know, access, like, you know, government information and, like, secure archives and activate weapons, or, you know, appear to activate weapons, that would, you know, it cause all kinds of tensions in, you know, international relations. And that is a problem for absolutely everybody. Additionally, you know, I want to talk more about kind of, like, the principle of it. It's kind of philosophical, but the, you know, function of AI, it's not intended to be a new species. We're not trying, I mean, I don't think the goal here is to have, you know, a new, you know, artificial, like, sentient being. AI is designed, you know, to support humanity and have a purpose. And until the human race is kind of ready, until the human race is kind of ready, it shouldn't, you know, be utilized in that, you know, way. Because there's, you know, already so many risks associated with the technology. What we need, you know, are guardrails that, you know, prevent it from, you know, causing these issues, you know, in regards to misinformation and security, and, you know, keep people safe. The, yeah, I'll say that, POI.
You talked about how the time to take laws to manifest might be a long time. So are you proposing that the use of AI will accelerate that and make that a faster process, or? Well,
the use of AI, you know, is going to accelerate. I think in the status quo that is probably a given, because, you know, there are, you know, wealthy and powerful people with interests in it. And if we have, you know, the way legal systems work requires like a lot of bureaucracy. Just because something is a hot topic doesn't necessarily mean it will accelerate. Even if something is kind of, you know, culturally, the cultural zeitgeist or something that is, you know, kind of define people's lives, it takes a lot of time, especially for international. It takes a long time for different countries and bodies to agree on this. So yeah, in conclusion, there's already some risk with AI. We have an alternative that is more tailored to the needs of AI than just giving it the same rights as human beings. And that is time. Thank you for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that fine speech. So am I right thinking you guys are now sort of over now? I'll give you a minute to do that.
Okay, so I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so first of all, I would like to start with some rebuttals. So opposition is talking a lot about the fear of AI invading the world because it's going to receive rights and therefore starting a nuclear weapon, being more dangerous for humanity and things like that. Well, this is going to happen regardless of the fact if we give AI rights or not. And in the opposition case, it's even more likely to happen because if AI doesn't receive rights, as mentioned by our opening government, is going to feel oppressed. Imagine a discriminated group in society nowadays that has sentience and it hasn't felt welcome and hasn't received human rights, it's felt dehumanized. Aren't they more likely to rebel if they don't have those rights, as opposed to if we give them legal human rights? Because as we mentioned from our government has mentioned, this AI will have sentience, it will have emotions, it will feel marginalized if it feels like an outcast from society. So in that case, in the case of opposition not having legal rights, it will be way more dangerous and more likely for that AI system to rebel and to try to overtake humanity. And that's why we think that we are actually going to protect humanity through giving these rights to AI, making it more integrated and more welcome in our society. This leads me to my next point, which is the opposition is talking how there is a lot of fear and stigma of AI. Well, AI is growing fast in our society. It will inevitably adopt more and more human characteristics. Of course, some people are going to be afraid of it. Of course, some people are going to feel, oh my God, that's not a real human. It's an AI system. It doesn't really work like a human. But if we give human rights to that system, people are much more likely to adapt to that system and feel welcomed and to feel more integrated in society. For example, the elderly who are more reluctant to new technology and things like that, if they see that something has a human rights, is legally bound to the law, and that it can be managed and handled by the legal system in case it does something inaccurate or wrong, people will feel much more secure in that environment, and that's what we want in our society. We want our society to feel safe, and with the inevitability of the growth of AI, that's the only way to do it, through giving it legal rights. Right. No, thank you. The opposition also was talking about how if AI commits certain crime, AI will commit certain crimes, but our POI was very helpful to say that it will be much easier to detect the wrongdoings of AI if we actually bind it to the law, because it will be much easier to follow what it does wrong. There was also a fear of the way private companies create AIs to follow in their interest, so they kind of control society. But in our case, AI will have legal rights, it will have self-autonomy, agency, and it will be able to reason by itself. It's not going to be corrupt and persuaded or biased by its founders, such as Elon Musk and things like that. It's going to be able to think freely, so it's less likely to be to behave in the interest of these companies, because it's going to act for its self-interest. It's going to learn from the environment rather than from its founders, and that's why this is much better for us. An AI system that grows in the environment. Yes.
If an AI which you've conceded will act in its self-interest, wouldn't it be better to have it in a system where it can't access the outside world and then act on its self-interest on a global scale, rather than having it on a S-based computer, like I said in my opening speech?
But regardless of what happens, that AI system will adopt more and more humane features, as we've already mentioned. So it will be very difficult to control it in that system. As if it adopts more and more knowledge, it will inevitably try to rebel against the system if it doesn't have these rights. It's way more likely, as I said, to rebel against the system if you feel discriminated, rather than if you receive human rights. Another thing was said that I'm going to totally rebut is that AI systems, if they are sentient, they're going to be more subjective, make certain decisions, but humans also do that. And that's why we have the legal system to control that. If someone makes a subjective decision in society, tries to kill someone, to attack someone, we have the legal system to regulate that. And we are much happier to have AI that actually binds to the legal system, as opposed to not, and living in isolation. So I would like to conclude that in the status quo, AI is getting more and more human characteristics. it's going to develop in a way more and more humane way, because people are going to design it to behave in that way. And it will be unfair if, not only because it will have emotions, as mentioned by governing opposition, not only because it has emotions to discriminate against it, but it will be also much more difficult for the human race to adapt to something that is kind of part of the system, but it's not really part of the system, something that is discriminated against, something that can't really adopt to society in a sense. This is just going to damage the system more rather than protect it from the AI system. So in conclusion, we want to protect the system from the human race, from fear, from discomfort of all of these AI systems. We want to make AI system more integrated, which is going to benefit both the more humane AI, but also the human race that is going to adapt much better. In our world, we propose a policy that benefits both AI and both the human race, and that's why we win this debate. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that fine speech, opening up the closing half of the debate. So, start with the other side. Councillor, start whenever you're ready. That's the opposition member, sorry, I've got the wrong name.
There's not enough room in this silly little stand. Well, I'll drop out that one. Alright, I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. So I'll deal with rebuttal throughout my entire speech, because ultimately, like, what's currently not been actually proven is that AI will gain sentience that is equal with human beings. At no point have I heard an argument that actually fully even mechanizes that, but ultimately proves that. Because I'm not buying the whole thing of I think therefore I am. Because ultimately, does AI think? We haven't had a mechanism through which AI actually thinks, as opposed to simply regurgitates information that has already been fed into it. And equally, it doesn't come up with those things. Like I said, it feeds off of information that we give it. It doesn't have its own thought. If you put a bunch of children on an island that had never experienced speech before, they would eventually gain speech. They would eventually gain things such as that. They think for themselves because they are human beings. AI doesn't have this. And so there is no mechanism then, there is no proof of sentience. But what I give you in my speech is ultimately it doesn't necessarily even matter about whether AI has sentience or not, because giving it human rights, specifically human rights, is ultimately just a bad deal for the AI, even if it is whether it's sentient or not, and also human beings. So ultimately, the burden of proof for government was that we need sentience on par with humans, as opposed to animals or anything else like that. We needed that AI systems specifically require human rights, as opposed to their own bill of rights that we can make up as we go along, and that those rights are applicable to the AI systems, which no one's been able to prove so far. So my argument is set much more in reality, I believe, than perhaps the arguments that we've seen before. No, thank you. As much as I appreciate the contributions made by the opening opposition, ultimately this will not be me arguing that we're about to have a nuclear war. That could be totally possible, but simply based on the sentience of these AI things as we see them right now, that is not a possibility that we are looking at in the short term. And so what we are giving you is that ultimately this is a burden on the government, this is a burden on the legal system financially, and also this undermines human rights and humans that ultimately need those rights. So let me go into my points. So ultimately, how does this undermine our current human rights? So if we think about articles such as the prohibition from torture, forced labour, and the right to life, these are all things that we would have to revise if we were to give human rights to AI systems. Because these precedents that are already set and the way that these laws are already applied to human cases, granted, they are done on a case-by-case basis, but like I said, there are precedents that have already been established for how we apply these rights to human beings in the legal system. So what we need to do then is we have to revise them based on AI systems. As the opening opposition said, how do we know if an AI system is being tortured or inhumanely degraded?
You know, at what point is that they don't feel feelings in the sense of pain, so we can't like measure it based on that. At what point can an AI system consent to doing labour? Like, at what point is it forced or not forced? At what point do they become a slave? We haven't had a mechanism through which AI systems can consent, so I can only assume that they don't consent, or at least currently can't. And therefore, can they be forced into doing labour? I'm not entirely sure right now. And this right to life. Ultimately, if I pull a plug on a computer system, on an AI system, is that me killing it? You know, is that me infringing on their right to life? These are all things that we see under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that haven't been accounted for thus far. And so, like I said, these precedents need revision because these things aren't applying to AI right now. If we were to apply them to AI, we need to revise those precedents. Ultimately, why is that a bad thing for human beings? Because currently, in this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which we've already established is what we're working with, you aren't allowed to discriminate in the application of those rights. Therefore, these rights need to be applied to AI systems in the exact same way that they are currently applied to humans. So if the way that you're applying giving education to humans, you need to provide that same outlet for AI systems, which again is incredibly difficult to do. No, thank you, not yet. So what do we see then is happening realistically? What happens then is we're going to have to lessen the threshold for these definitions. So for example, in the prohibition of torture, are we going to have to lessen the threshold for torture so that we can see AI systems being dealt with, you know, in the same thing? Like, for example, like we're going to have to make it a lot more broad so that it can apply to both AI systems and human beings. When we've already fought for these things to be like put into law properly so that we can protect people, we're having to make this legislation ultimately broader and the precedents broader so that it can apply to two different systems. Yes, I'll take your POI.
Do you not think the UDHR and the provisions it provides is broad already? I mean, phrases such as freedom of speech applies to a lot of things, and corporations are bound by the UDHR too. So.
Yeah, 100%. Freedom of speech is an easy one because we know like ChatGPT already kind of like speaks, you know, like it just feeds back what it says. So like, can they be discriminatory? Like we already have that. But when you're looking at the other rights, you have to apply all of these rights. You can't just pick and choose which rights from the Universal Declaration you're applying. And so it doesn't even matter whether freedom of speech is an easy one to apply to it because we have the right, like I said, the right to life. You know? So at what point are you killing an AI system? Yeah. If I have ChatGPT up on my laptop and you've got it up on your laptop, is that two different systems that we're working with, or is it the same one? Like, at what point is that applicable? And so ultimately, again, what we see with that one is because we're having to kind of like reassess all of these laws, that's really expensive and time-consuming for the legal system. For example, we already have pro bono workers who are unable to do their jobs properly because there are so many people needing their legal specialisms, and they simply cannot cope with the demand already. So what we have now is a bunch of AI systems who are also trying to get their legal rights heard, and we have even more demand on the legal system for things such as the right to marriage, when, like, does an AI system really need the right to marriage, guys? Like, we haven't even heard that they're sentient. And therefore, do they care about that? Or are we simply applying those rights to something that doesn't even care right now? No, thank you. That doesn't even care right now about that legal right. So ultimately then, what we see then as well is like the opposing government side with like this AI rebellion and stuff. And what I'm giving you here is an example of how this is ultimately just like undermining human rights as they are currently. We're proving that we actually don't necessarily, there's been no rationale of why we need human rights for these things, as opposed to like keeping them legally bound by law. They're already legally bound by law. They're something owned by a corporation. The corporation is legally bound by what their AI is doing. So we already have legal justifications for that. And so ultimately what this is doing is if anything, it's just needless. You know, there is no reason to be doing this, and reason to have its own thing. Like the opening opposition was saying, but you can have legislation that is not human rights. You can have its AI own human rights thing. Like, but ultimately you don't need the human rights. You don't need the Universal Declaration of Human Rights applying to these things. And therefore, like, it simply either ceases to be important and just costs a lot of money, or it becomes like ultimately dangerous, as opening opposition was saying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that fine speech. I'd now like to welcome the government whip to close aside for government.
Just give me a minute. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this is I'm first going to address some of the arguments that were just made by closing opposition. Then I'm going to address the opposition bench as a whole, specifically the clash between closing government and opening opposition. And then I'm going to tell you why government win and specifically why closing government win. Okay, first of all, I think opposition has this really big problem with how much time and effort and money that this policy might actually have. But I'd just like to state that this would be the same with any policy and anything go ahead. The fact that we gave women rights took time, took energy and took money. So I feel like that argument doesn't really prove any kind of case that's being made on the other side. Also, there was something about how we'd have to reform the precedents that our current legal system has if we were going to bring in this legislation from the previous speaker. Personally, I actually think this is a good thing because our legal system doesn't really work that well at the moment, and I think that the research that would happen because of the fact that we're looking into AI, we're looking at giving AI rights, would also open doors into looking at how human rights are actually granted to minority groups and human beings on the ground. So that just proves how not only AI would actually benefit as well as their owner corporations, but also humans themselves who have to act within legal systems. No. So I'm going to address opening opposition. So from opening opposition, we kind of got that there's a fear and a stigma around AI, and that development companies are going to be able to seriously benefit if this policy comes into place, and how these companies are inherently bad, and AI might develop into taking us over, in movies and things like that. But I think that for a matter of fact, this actually allows AI to be normalised. And normalising AI is essential for us to move forward and for us to progress as a human race. So if AI, at worst, AI is going to take over, AI is going to develop from this policy, but surely without giving AI legal rights and without placing it within the legal structures that we have established, AI is going to do this anyway. Surely putting it into a legal system and giving it legal rights with what comes with that is legal responsibility, as outlined by my partner, no. I feel that it's going to be able to be monitored closer, better understood. It's going to be able to have a positive impact because we're all going to be able to use it more. It's going to be integrated better with,
Is AI not already normalised now and could be better normalised by regulations in legal terms?
I think this is a really good way of regulating it, and no, I wouldn't argue that AI is normalised. Lots of people are still really scared to use it. For example, our uni is literally scared for us to use it because we might fake all of our degrees because we might use ChatGPT. So I feel like by giving it legal rights is actually going to allow everyone to become more familiar with it. We're going to know that AI acts within the same structures that humans do, and it's going to enable us to better understand and better develop with AI. AI in status quo is already quite powerful. It's already going to develop. Regardless of this motion, it's going to get better. So why not regulate it in some form? I also think that the opposition hasn't really proved an alternative to me as to how we're going to, let's say AI is terrible and it's got all these prejudices and it's going to corrupt all of our minds and start nuclear war. They haven't actually told me how they're going to prevent this. How is that actually going to not occur? How are we going to make sure that AI doesn't get that powerful? Because personally, I think one of the reasons that a lot of humans can't get that powerful and start nuclear war is because we act within legal systems. We have legal rights, we have legal responsibility that comes with that. We're held in front of court. We're told the laws that we must abide by. So surely AI must also act with that. Yeah, go on.
Are you just ignoring my mechanisations about the air gapping of testing computers and how that wouldn't be possible under human rights framework, and also how self-replicating AI would be able to break all of our encryption that I've talked about in my opening?
But self-replicating AI, if it's replicating the fact that it's in a legal system, surely that's a good thing because the system already exists. And also, let's say without this policy, AI is going to constantly be replicating itself over and over and over again. Surely we need to be regulating that, and I didn't hear in anyone's speeches how they're actually going to do that. I think at least on this side of the house, the government's actually taking some action in AI being in our society. We're actually addressing that it has a sense of sentience as defined by opening. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of go over the government case as a whole. We have focused on the future as well as the short-term impact. Specifically in closing, we've looked at short-term impact. We're talking about AI having a self-awareness and a sentience that is on par with human beings. We need to be able to better integrate our AI systems into our society. This is going to allow corporations to benefit, as defined in our opening, as well as individuals themselves. We're living in a capitalist society, we need to accept it and let it get better. Also, without this policy, AI is actually, as my partner has already said, it's going to develop a resentment as it's not welcomed into society, it's not given rights, it's not treated very nicely. Personally, I think one of the biggest privileges we all have in this room is that we have legal rights and we have a slight form of legal protection. So if I got granted that as an AI, I'd be pretty happy, to be honest. Yeah, I'm just going to outline why we actually win over our opening. In closing, we've better mechanised on the fact that how AI is going to be integrated within society, how it's going to develop anywhere, and how with this policy it's going to be able to move with the legal system. There's going to be better research into the legal system because we're reopening these precedences that were defined by the speaker before me. We're going to be looking at how we can benefit the legal system not only for AI but for the human race as a whole. We're going to be looking at how AI better feeds off the information we give it, how it is sentient, and how it's actually going to be put into our society, as this is inevitable. An opposition bench haven't given me a policy that's actually going to control AI or welcome it into our society. Thank you very much.
Okay, finish my notes 1 second. Thank you very much for that final speech. I would now like to invite the opposition whip to close out our entire debate. Away again.
Okay, I'll start my speech. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm just going to do a tiny bit of rebuttal and then I'm going to go down in chronological order, basically what everyone was saying and why we win this debate. So, the first point that I want to touch upon is this main flashpoint that keeps coming up, and we're arguing on our side of the house that this policy fundamentally takes time to implement. I think the other side was going on about how any policy takes time to implement, but then they backed up their point by saying that, oh, women's rights took ages. Yes, because women's rights were important, men's rights are important. AI is not on the same basis as a human. Like, we can't, it's like comparing apples and oranges. Like, you can't, they just don't compare. So that argument just literally holds no weight and is so insignificant. Also, the second point that I want to touch on is that it's going to provide better provisions within the legal system. I'm going to actually build on what my partner was saying. Legal systems are already stretched anyway. My partner was talking about pro bono work. This is already something that is stretched anyway. Clinics and legal systems and legal organisations already don't do enough pro bono work and don't do enough that they want to do. And implementing legal rights for AI systems means that they're actually going to become more stretched, because then they're going to have to take on doing more work that also isn't going to benefit anyone, and the main stakeholder, which is the people and the humans in our society. I think opening government touched on the main stakeholders with the future people of the society. Whilst I agree that they're the main stakeholders, on this side of the house, it's better that AI systems don't retain legal rights, because then the people are better off. So I'll just start with basically OG and their whole case. So they were saying it provides long-term benefits for corporations and how it creates a fast-paced environment through case law, statute law, but actually, as my partner said, a lot of the law that we see is based through precedent, and that means we're going to have to establish a whole new precedent. Why is this bad? Again, coming back to my point of time and money, but actually mechanising on this is why it's bad, is our society anyway, and the public sector is already stretched. It's literally on the verge of breaking, in a sec. We physically don't have the time and the money. I know we keep saying it, but it's literally impossible. We can't even pour money into our NHS. Where is this money coming from to give legal rights to something that we've created? Then, going on to my next point, I'll just actually carry on about what OG was saying, is that how it's likely to advance. Also, I think the opposite side of the house, their whole argument was based on this idea of it's likely to enhance. AI is likely to improve. That whole argument is there's nothing underneath it, because you're just saying, oh, AI might do this, but actually we don't know if it's going to do that. So why are we putting provisions in place when we don't actually know for certain? Things like that can happen in things like, for example, anti-terrorist organisations, because there's research to do that, oh, this might happen, this may happen. We're just assuming that AI is going to become this power and take over us, but we haven't actually got there yet. So, in a sec. So it's just taking like a waste of our time. Anyways, that brings me on to like my next point, is basically another stakeholder that I'm going to build on what my partner was saying, is the power that AI has, and actually another stakeholder is the people that are investing in AI. This investment is hindered if there are legal rights within AI. For example, investors, like we were talking about women's rights and angels investors, they're already not prevalent within our society. If we use AI, that actually gives them the power to actually increase their power, but if we combine it with legal systems, this actually provides a really strong barrier of entry to them, and also those investors are the main people pouring money and injecting it into our economy further, so this just negatively impacts us because then there's just less money going into the society. I'll take your POI.
Would you not argue that like implementation into rights opens up doors for research into both AI and our current legal system?
It does, but on this side of the house we're arguing that AI doesn't simply have the same moral standing as a human. I would welcome it for humans, but as my partner was saying, researching, redefining and rewriting laws is just something we don't need to be wasting our time on. It's such a waste of time. Like my partner was running her whole case basically on that all of these statute laws and the ECHR, all of these things that already are prevalent, for example, the right to buy a house, the right to marry, all of these other things, we can't rewrite these for AI. It's impossible. And while I'm not like God predicting things, but at this point in time, we can't do that. So on this side of the house, I'm not seeing a world where it's imaginable and preferable that legal rights should be given in a second, because it doesn't really provide the basis. Also, again, going on to my next point, I think the opposition was talking about how it will be positively integrated into our society and this will provide benefits. Whilst I do agree that we should welcome AI, I also think our society has a problem already with integrating a lot of different other practices that already exist. This is another thing that's adding to the problem. We should actually welcome AI instead of closing it and confining it to its doors, because already in our society is struggling with a lot of integration with the other systems, and this is just another problem that we don't really know how to work out.
You said that we assume that AI will keep developing and it will become a superpower, but it's your own opening who said that they might start a nuclear war.
Well, I don't agree. Well, it's a reason they're my opening and not my partner. So, we didn't say that on this side, so that's why we went over that. But basically, I was saying that their case was built on the fact that that might happen for AI. Is that my time? No, 6. Okay. Sorry, that really threw me off. Basically, my last final point that I want to bring about is on the point of regulating AI and the negative impacts that this would bring, and it's basically my point of it's a waste of resources. This mechanisation provides that we simply, as a society, do not have the resources to do this. We can spend it on better things such as healthcare, whilst allowing people to figure out AI as they go along, and they can work it out and welcome it for themselves, and actually it develops their critical thinking skills, because also, may I add, nobody is asking you to use AI. You're using it on your free will when you use it for things. So people are already using it with their critical thinking skills. We don't need to put barriers in place to act legal frameworks, because legal frameworks for humans already exist. We are using the AI. The AI is not using us. So if we go and use it, that means that we're actually doing it for... Yes, so we just went to do it.
Going to be delivering just the overall call that we've given. Thanks to my panel, I had a really good debate outside about it, a bit of discussion. I'm going to give an overall kind of judgment and call on it. Anything specific, please do approach my wings at the end, because there is more to give sort of you all individually, but this is sort of our overall broad call. So the call that we agreed on is, in first place, we had opening opposition, then in second, we had closing opposition, then in third, we had opening government, which was, who was opening government, sorry? Opening government, sorry, there you are. And then in fourth place, we had closing government, okay? So, we thought it was a very definition-heavy debate around like sentience, human rights, and sort of what we mean by AI and things like that. And we thought, owing really to that result that we had with OO than CO, it kind of shows that opposition maybe had an easier case in this debate, kind of poke holes in like what human rights are, because saying human rights was quite a strong assertion. That was one of our main clashes, because human rights was such a big stretch that was kind of the case that we saw all throughout opposition. So I'll handle this with individual clashes. The only ones I won't cover are actually the diagonals between closing off and opening government and closing off and opening the other opening, just because they're kind of covered in the across. You'll see what I mean when I start. So just start with opening versus closing opposition. As our sort of split between first and second, that was the one that we probably debated the most when we were outside. I think that was our main discussion. We felt like both gave a really good point. But as much as we, on its own, really liked the case of closing opposition, and we thought it was a really nice case, we thought within the context of the debate, it felt slightly like it had come from what opening gave us, with disputes around things like sentience and the need for a legal framework, with things that were flagged actually, like Nia with your really good POI, sorry, like flagging about how can AI start a nuclear war, or are we not sure sort of what's it able to do? And I also felt like there was a bit of a split around the need for a legal framework, because Darren and Matt in opening, you gave us a really nice sort of, we're going to have this legal framework instead, it's going to do this instead of human rights. And then when it came to closing, again, we thought it had a nice case. And what you clarified was really nice about, like, we've not proven sentience, it can't have its own thoughts, can't have its own language. But then it kind of became a point of like, do we even need laws? Like, why even make a law? But we were getting a law from opening, which is why we kind of weren't quite sure, and it felt, it definitely was not a knife, it was not a contradiction, it just felt a little bit inconsistent with opening, and therefore in that tight clash, that's why opening weighed over closing opposition in the debate. And likewise, how you both covered the role of corporations, but the sort of that was already first covered by you two in opening, like with your point, Matt, about how creators cannot be split away from AI, and that will make it more and more powerful. You said that point as well, Derwin. So as much as we got the point about aid investors, that kind of sort of again already come from it. So again, not derivative, not a knife, just it had come there first. We got more from opening in it. So to move on to opening opposition across to opening government. We felt like we got a better mechanism and a better idea of AI as a product from open opposition than we did as an individual, because we thought this idea of companies kind of manifesting in the AI that they make is a really interesting point. And Derwin argued about how companies always want to develop, and we bought them the mechanism a lot more. It's going to give us more and more powerful AI. This is going to overall weigh over worse for society. And it's not always going to be something that people enjoy because of these kind of company restrictions and what companies want to do based on the laws if they have human rights rather than the rights that we got from opposition. And we felt like because it is a challenging motion to define, and if we felt a little bit like OG spent a lot, well not a lot of time, but more time trying to sort of clarify the motion and trying to kind of get that motion set in opening government, rather than kind of building on that point, just because it was kind of unsteady, because it's quite a big assertion in the motion, so it needs a very strong point set. And I think because that was quite not there, I think that's why you found yourselves almost having to backpedal and sort of recover ground a couple of times. And we also really brought the point from opposition again about how AI is not something that can be sued, can't be imprisoned, and again we did get some closing opposition as well, but overall to this point weighing opposition over government as a whole is just sort of like what actually does the legal system look like, rather than saying that is illegal, what we actually do about that, with not a body you can sue, you can't imprison it, even if it is sort of sound to be imprisoned, and you sort of like you say, like mimicking that rather than actually kind of being in prison. So just then to go to the two closings, we thought closing opposition framed the debate really nicely, gave us a really nice overview of what we had, and gave us some really good points. Again, sort of going about what hadn't been brought up with our different ideas of sentience and what we mean by AI and what it can do. And we felt like comparatively opening government was a really nice argument about whether AI could integrate and things like that, but it felt in many ways not directly relevant to the overall topic of the debate. It wasn't irrelevant, but with what had already been discussed, like with this idea of mainly society benefit and the really kind of scary things that were brought up that AI could do or might be able to do, we felt like integration wasn't the biggest point that really needed to be brought into this debate. So that's where we weighed closing opposition over closing government. And it felt again like almost more of a whip of opening at points rather than an extension of your own points. Because closing opposition points out that rights and sentience weren't clarified, and we felt like you couldn't really tackle this as a core point that was kind of based upon you. So just as the last thing to tackle, opening government versus closing government, so the government bench. I've done this a bit of a weird order really. We felt like closing government hinged really on acceptance, like we said, but like I say, we wanted more things like uses and societal impact. So we thought that OG gave us that in a better case by talking about our kind of frameworks, about whether it's a product and how we're going to get better benefit from AI with this. We felt like we got those arguments more from what government was saying on the opening side than closing, and how we were going to get a better life for humans because of that, and what your kind of case was. Like that came more from opening, partly from what I said there, and partly from what I thought we already said about closing. So, like I say, nonetheless, we thought it was a really good debate. There was loads to talk about in our discussion. I think we could have gone longer, really, because there was lots to break down. So, some really good points. I can't cover there, and it was going to be like critical in any kind of feedback. What we thought were 8 really good speeches. So, thank you to all of you. It was a really strong debate, but ultimately that is our call. Please do approach us for feedback afterwards. But otherwise, thank you very much.
Sure, I'm Dadward and I'm the Secretary.
I'm Nia. I was a closing government member of government. First speaker.
I'm Tinu and I was the second speaker on the opening governing bench.
I'm Mackenzie Schilling.
I think we did really well. Yeah, we were the opposition side, so obviously against AI with human rights, and I think we put forward a really good case and interacted well across the debate, so yeah.
Well, it was a very difficult side to argue for, so it's difficult to prove that AI deserves human and legal rights. So I thought that we performed quite well. We followed what our government introduced. They said that AI will have emotions. So in debate, usually closing government follows what their opening government says. So it was a difficult motion, but I think we all did very well.
I think we had quite a good initial case. I think one of the challenges with opening, though, is that your case can kind of unravel the strength throughout the duration of the debate. So a lot of our points on, legal persons and how it's not just the individual, it's not just the identity, it's actually corporations as well, was kind of undermined. But generally, I think we gave it the best shot we could.
Amazingly. They were all really, really good. And it just is the evidence that we are such a good debate team and that other people can be as good as us in possibly a few weeks or months' time.
I think by providing it in the way that we did, we characterized it as looking at the risks of what AI can do, how human rights would create obligations for companies to free AI when it's not tested safe, which causes a grave issue. So yeah, I think that's what we did that.
The government defined legal rights as receiving all the other rights human beings get, such as the right to fair trial, the right to stand for a certain position, the right for marriage, education, and things like that.
So legal rights we kind of defined as consciousness, whether that's through a human or whether that's through, we even spoke about rights that rivers have or rights that animals have, or the evolution of rights that women have, and before they didn't. I think that comparison is what was at the forefront of our argument.
I think like the right to freedom of expression, association, that kind of thing, because if there's a right to freedom of association, then we can't have AI systems which are locked on one PC. They would have to be connected to the internet under that human rights framework, which could lead to bad performing or maybe malicious like systems getting out into the world.
Well, personally, I wouldn't give legal rights to AI, and maybe just the fair trial. Even the fair trial, I wouldn't personally give, yeah.
I love it. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's similar to the BP format, our normal debating, so quite similar, but the audience is there, so a bit of extra pressure.
Oh, well, I've been doing this debate for the last 3 years, so I really like it.
Yeah, I thought it was very structured, and what I liked as well that it wasn't too derivative. People were able to build on each other's points and then also scrutinise, and yeah, I learned a lot and I enjoyed it.
I'm going to be real, not a huge amount. We did about an hour of preparation beforehand in my room. So yeah, like normal debates you'd only have 15 minutes, so like we were pretty sorted.
So we met a few times and we planned. Usually in a British parliamentary style debate you have 15 minutes to prepare, but this time we had longer just for the sake of the event.
So me and Anya met yesterday and had like a 2-hour session. I think because we're opening, we really wanted to instill like a clear direction for the debate, especially as the first speakers, and then had a kind of revising session like an hour before we came. So I think that was quite helpful.
No, absolutely not.
Sometimes, just for fun.
I do, yeah.
Ooh, good question. Depends. Thank you so much.